2 of part 2 of my Viking leatherworking videos. For part 1, the link's right there. So now that that's cut out, or cut, it's time to do the carving. One thing that's really important is remembering what parts should look like they go under other parts, or what parts look like they should actually curve. If you're doing something that's an animal form or something, it's really important to make sure you know which direction things should be curving, so that you use the tools to emboss them in the right direction. So that way you get the depth. In this case, with knotwork, this part passes under this part, so the end of this is going to be embossed down, whereas this sticks up. I'm going to make these ridges stick up more than the inside, and that'll give a curved look to all of this section. The shield boss, this part, the ring on the outside has to look like it's sitting above all of the rest, so all of this kind of gets pushed in. But this has to be sitting above this, so the inner edge of this ring has to be pushed in. And then maybe this will be rounded a little bit. The whole outer edge of this has to look like it's pushed up, so the shield section appears to be lower than the knotwork. The insides should be pushed in, so that this stands out. And then all the way around this has to be pushed in and then sort of feathered out, so that this section looks like the shield is sitting on top of it. So let's begin. I'll start on the outside and work my way in. It's good to wet the leather again, just sort of rub it in a bit, just so that everything is at its optimum to be pushed in and worked, and actually stay that way. It'd be a shame to have this perfect and then have all the embossing kind of come out of it. And so I just sort of start by gently running this around the outside, sort of pushing it in, following the line, sort of keeping pressure this way, but not too much, or else you'll skip in and kind of ruin the edge of that you've cut. It does take a bit of practice to apply the right pressure. If you don't apply enough, you won't really be doing a whole lot. And if you apply too much, you'll actually start to tear the leather. And that's also another reason why you want the leather fairly wet, so you don't tear it. And when you come up to a spot that has a line that you've embossed on it, that's kind of still there from where you've carved, you can just kind of lightly go over it with the tip, or even just a rounded section of antler like this piece. Just kind of lightly go over it, and that sort of just rubs it out. It's called burnishing. So apply a little more pressure, and then you can vary your angle a little bit to feather this back out, so that it doesn't look like an abrupt edge on your piece. Water, and then if you want a fairly sharp edge like I do on this, you take this thinner one and you really push down and into that corner with the more pronounced edge of the thing. So basically you're pushing into your cut, and just a bit of pressure. Not even a back and forth motion, just pushing into it to get that nice sharp edge, and then you can feather out the groove a little bit. So now we'll do the other side. Starting with the bigger antler tip, just to get a bulk of it smoothed in. Now this method differs from more modern style, more modern style leather tooling, because instead of taking the tool and setting it vertically in the groove and then hammering on it with a mallet, I'm just essentially using this as a bone folder, which is a tool used in other types of leatherworking for actually pressing down folds and things, and also the same way that you would use a burnisher when you're basically creating a leather mask or something that you're forming the leather into different grooves and stuff. You'd actually use one of these to make sure that is taking the groove. So it does have basis in history, because in the original masks they used for Commedia dell'arte in Italy were made of leather, where they would take the leather and stretch it over a form that was sculpted to the desired design, and then they would use tools like these over many hours, forcing the leather to conform to the shape of the mold. Then they would take it off the form when it's done and dried a bit, and they would submerge it in boiling water, or hot wax, which would force it to harden. In the same way that in later into the medieval period, they actually made armor from boiled leather. So it's interesting that those techniques are fairly interchangeable. So that's the first part of the tooling done. Now I'm going to move into the inside. I'll probably do one of these knotwork sections and then do a bit of a time jump so that it's not going to be too terribly long of a video. Then I'll show you how to burnish the edges. And then the next video will be punching the holes and doing the assembly of the piece, as well as using dies and stuff to finish it. So now it's just remembering that which lines go under which parts and pressing them in. I find when you get to a tight corner like that, you can just use the tip and just push really hard on it instead of having to rub into the corner, because when you do that, sometimes the little piece in the corner peels up a little bit because part of the membrane has been or the membrane there has been sort of cut away, and so that little corner lifts a bit, and that's not something that's 100% desired. And so you want this section here to be lower than this section, but you don't want it to be so low that it's lower than the outside. And so you can kind of, in the secondary round with the tighter one, you can actually push this section a bit lower than the other one. Then you can kind of just burnish over to take out the middle of that, and sort of give it the appearance that it's a lot lower than the knotwork section, when in reality it's, maybe a millimeter different, probably less. This is a very, very extremely low relief. It's nothing like what you'd get in a low relief carving in wood or something. It's just a fairly light thing. So as you go around, you can really see how things are coming along. and how it sort of evolves into, or comes into being, basically. And you can crisp up the lines later, and the more that you go over it, the more that the better it looks. And because of how small these lines are, they're forming basically a ridge that is slightly rounded off because of the roundness of the tips. And so it definitely pays off to stick to the KISS principle when designing things to be tooled in. Simple is usually better. You know, it's nice to show off what you can do, but when you're starting out or you want to do things fairly quickly, keeping it simple is the best way. And if you start to lose your lines, one of the things you can do is spray it with the water or rub the water on, which will sort of help you find your lines again and everything, because the parts that you've gone over are going to be a slightly different color when wet than the rest of it, because the leather that's there is a little bit denser because it's compressed. So it helps you a little bit to see what you're doing. So I will actually quickly show you how to do the burnishing on the edges, and then I will probably finish the tooling on this and then show you the end result, just to save this video from being 20 minutes long. So what you want to do is you want to keep the leather fairly wet, again, so that it can form a bit better. And with this tool, I just run it along with a lot of pressure and some speed. And when you are rounding the edge over and it's getting to the point where it's shiny and smooth, you know that you've done the job. And so you can do the same thing with a piece like this, back and forth with a lot of pressure, maybe sometimes varying your angle, and it helps to have a piece like this around, even if you use something like this, because it's not going to be able to take this as easily as one of these will. You can also use pieces of polished wood to do the same purpose. And if you're going to make something that is going to be worn, like a bracer or something, you might want to burnish the inside edges as well, because if you have a sharp edge from being cut there, that might actually be very uncomfortable to wear. And if you have a piece like this, you can go along the edge this way, especially if you have some way of clamping this, so that it's clamped roughly like that in a leatherworking vise, or clamped between two pieces of wood or something like that, and then you can run this along, which will actually do both at the same time. You can do it while it's held, it's just not as easy or comfortable. And yeah, that's about all there is for burnishing. It just keep going until it's changed color a little bit, because you're sort of friction burning that section of the leather, and it gets rid of some of the fuzzies and stuff on the edge as well. Just gives it a more finished look. And once you've changed that color and it's smooth and rounded, you've burnished the edge, and that's the finished edge. So I'll finish the piece, and then I'll show you what it looks like. So here's the finished piece. I might still go in and clean up a few things, but that's basically the way it's going to look. So next week I will show you how to punch the holes, both a modern way and a more period way, and basically how to stitch it all together. I'll also show you how to make your own leather dye using coffee. It's not period, but at least it's somewhat close to. It's a very similar technique to actually making it with walnut husks or other natural means, and it gives you a look that's fairly similar to what walnut husk would kind of give you. So that's that. One thing to keep in mind with this project, it really is just my take on it. It sort of comes from me not wanting to use modern methods and looking for something that's more historical. And in the Viking Age, I believe the only finds that they've found from that period that are truly leatherworking tools are awls. I don't know of any tooling tools that exist, so there's that. But in a lot of the grave finds and other garbage piles, midden mounds and stuff, they have found a surplus of antler tips and bone fragments and all kinds of things. So there's a theory out there that some of those could have actually been from tools that the wooden handle of has either rotted away, or the tool broke, and so then it was thrown away, and you have a little piece of a fragment of wood and a fragment of bone, and they can only be recorded as that because they don't know what they were. And it could actually be that they were parts of leatherworking tools or other types of tools that used bone instead of metal. So just keeping that in mind, and keeping in mind that I'm not an archaeologist. I don't really work in that field. I'm just I'm a reenactor who makes things and also likes puzzles. And so I will sometimes do experimental archaeology means to figure something out that kind of intrigues me. So that's sort of the disclaimer on that. So thank you for watching. Again, don't hesitate to comment and like and subscribe.